let's just go through the agenda of what we're going to do today. We'll start off, we'll talk a little bit about who we are as eDynamics and what we're doing with regards to GDPR. I'll take you through a little bit of data protection history. Again, I don't want to bore you all, but I feel it's important to talk about a little bit of that, why we're doing this and why we are where we are. We'll talk about the difficulties of the GDPR of themselves, specific to the motor industry, but they are widespread, so they are difficulties that will apply to everywhere. I'll then take you through a live demo. So we're going to look at our iConsent app, which runs on a tablet and also on a desktop. We have active digital reception, which is built into our vehicle health check platform. And again, I'll give you a very quick walkthrough of that. We have a suite of desktop applications which existing customers will already be using, and we've knitted iConsent into all of those. So this is really going to help you with your consent capture. We've got our GDPR cleanse module. Now that is for actually using the consent for marketing. That's what that's all about, really. So I'll talk you through that. We've built a good, really good suite of management information through our Connect app, but also we've got reporting via email and a reporting suite as well. And then finally, we've got something else we've built as a GDPR compliance manager. So any data protection officers, compliance managers that are working in the businesses, this is going to really help you manage all of the things you have to have in place to become compliant by the 25th of May. And then, like I said, we'll do the Q&A right at the end. So please, save up your questions for there, and we'll try to get through as many as possible. Fantastic. Okay, so who is eDynamics? Now, some of you may be existing customers, some of you may not know too much about us. We've been going for 8 years now. A lot of experience within the business itself. We have a very, very big development team and customer-facing team as well. What we do at our core is try to be a single solution for after sales. That's bringing together service plan, VHC, CRM, all of the things you see there, plus many more. Just try to pick out the key ones. We now work with well over 1,000 dealers in the UK. We're spreading our wings and working with global partners as well. So in 8 years we've come a hell of a long way. And we're at the point now where we feel we can offer a single sign-on solution, and with iConsent built into that, it's really going to be a benefit for a lot of dealers. So two things I want to make really highlight is that we have the ISO 27001 accreditation. That is a data security accreditation. There isn't at this moment in time a certification for data providers to be a GDPR certified, but that is going to come, and we will seek that out and certainly look to have that as and when it comes, which is probably going to be next year. The other thing to mention is we're also a member of the Direct Marketing Association. They have had a lot of done a lot of work with the ICO in terms of actually writing the GDPR, and being a member of them, we have access to a lot of inside knowledge, and we get everything we do checked and verified against their legal team, so that iConsent that we built is really robust. So a little very, very brief history, and something I want to point out something here that doesn't get talked about a lot, but it's really, really crucial. So I mean, back in 1990, actually, the internet was born, and even by 95 and 98, when the Data Protection Directive and the Data Protection Act were implemented, the internet really wasn't developed. It was still in its infancy. Not many people had email addresses. So the original Data Protection Act was not designed to deal with what the internet has brought us over time. What was implemented in 2003, and this is the piece that doesn't really get talked about much, is the Privacy and Electronic Communications Directive regulations. It's shortened to PECR. And what this looks after is the protection of digital communications. So that would be telephone communication, SMS, email, and even fax. Now, because the internet changes so much over the years, this has actually been updated 4 times since. It's due to be updated again next year. So it's not just the GDPR that's coming into force on the 25th of May this year, it's also the PECR. Now, all three things are actually are relevant right now. So we can't just be looking at GDPR, we need to be looking at all three because, and I'll go on to why that is in a minute. What there is a really good marketing guide that the ICO have put together. I use it all the time. It's about 60 pages long, but it actually brings all three into one document. It's really useful because it highlights how the state of play is now, how it's going to be, and and how these things interact with each other. What we'll make sure is that everyone on this webinar gets a copy of that because it's the best one out there that I've seen, and I think it's really is, it's almost like a Bible for doing all of this. So I just want to talk a little bit more about the difficulties that we face trying to implement GDPR and also the PECR. These two things are really go hand in hand. The first difficulty I've seen is updating consent for existing customers. This is a real problem for car dealers and manufacturers, and probably also almost certainly other industries as well. Is that how do we make sure that we update consent for existing customers? I've seen reliance on soft opt-in quite a lot. I've seen a couple of brands send out mass emails trying to update consent. Honda did that and it didn't work too well for them. I'll explain why that was the case in a minute. It's not always explained very well. So I'll tell you a bit about that just very shortly. Embedding content capture within daily processes is something that we all need to try and facilitate. I've worked with a number of dealers already who have created a nice document that can work in the showroom, but it is manually capturing it on paper, and trying to implement that into a process is not very fluid. So what we need is a nice, simple, straightforward way to actually capture consent, as part of doing those regular processes in all departments. Capturing consent in multiple systems. So we all have a DMS, showroom system, after sales CRM. The more systems we have, the more it complicates it because you have multiple databases. And what we really don't want is to have multiple databases of consent, because then it's which one takes precedence. You really only want one master consent database, and that's what we'll talk about with iConsent. Respecting opt-outs. Now, duplicate records are a real problem here. We need to make sure, and I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail in a moment, how do we actually deal with duplicate records? Many DMS systems I've seen have multiple instances of the same customer record, and what you have to think about is if you're only going to update one of those records with consent, what about the other ones, especially when the customer wants to opt out. Measuring and managing consent. So there's been a lot of talk about where to put consent, but actually what we really should be thinking about as well is how much consent are we capturing, on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, and on ongoing, how much consent have we updated when we change our privacy policy. So we need to have a really good, robust reporting mechanism to actually keep track of all of that. And then the final piece is compliance management. I'm sure many of you on the call are already well down the road of putting everything in place to be compliant, but it's how do you keep control of all that? How do you log all the evidence that you need should you require it in the future? So that's something we've addressed with iConsent as well. Okay, so just to pick out a couple of those, just to really highlight some of the issues that it's quite difficult to overcome, and we need to that's what we've at eDynamics have thought about with iConsent. So soft opt-in, what that is where you've got an existing customer and you want to try and use their information for marketing. So as part of that, what a lot of people have done in the past is send them marketing via email and provide them with an opt-out in that email. However, there's a piece of the PECR regulations that is very important, and it's what I've put in the red at the bottom. This is actually what Honda fell foul of. You must have given them a clear chance to opt out, and this is the crucial bit, both when you first collected their details and in every message you send. So it's not enough to have given them an opt out on your marketing every time you sent them an email. You must also have evidence that when you first collected their information, you gave them an opt out then. So when Honda sent their email out to 300,000 people, it actually asked them to update the consent. One person complained because their argument was that they'd never originally, when the data was first collected, been given the chance to opt out. And because Honda couldn't prove that, they didn't have the evidence of doing that, that's where they fell foul. So, we've been asked by a number of dealers already, can we send out a mass email to all our existing customers asking them for consent? Technically, yes. However, if you can't evidence that you originally gave them the ability to opt out of marketing, then it's going to be incredibly difficult to actually do that mass email. I'll come on to it a little bit later, but it's really not straightforward at all. Someone's just asked me, actually, do you need to obtain new consent before the 25th of May? No, you don't. You do if you want to market your customers after the 25th of May. There's something called legitimate interest, which I'm sure many people have heard about. It's not a silver bullet. I was at a GDPR conference recently, and a lawyer was on stage saying, look, it's not a silver bullet. You can't use legitimate interest for everything. You can use it for things like service reminders and MOT reminders, recalls. Beyond that, you're really starting to get into areas where you have to do what's called a balancing test to understand does the information you want to send to a customer override their rights, and there's quite a lot of times where that will not be the case. So no, you don't have to get all your consent done before the 25th of May. A lot of people now realize this is probably going to take a year or two to it's going to have to be on a transaction by transaction basis. So every time you see a customer, even if they don't buy anything from you, they may only inquire. But we need to, every time we do speak to a customer, or whether through any form of communication, try and capture consent. So that's something that is well worth bearing in mind. We don't need to have the entire database reconsented by the 25th of May. I hope that answered that question, and I'll be talking a little bit more about it as we go on as well. Okay, so that's soft opt-ins, and I hope that makes it clear as to why a mass consent email isn't the best idea. So I want to come on to duplicate records. Now, this is something that many dealers have, many databases have, and I want to highlight. This is my own information in here, so we're trying to stay, even on this webinar, as anonymous as possible in terms of data we're showing everyone. What we have here is an example of 3 data DMS records. Now, as you can see, they've all been set up differently, and we've got consent options against each one. But as you can see, these consent options may have been recorded at different times, and we've actually been given different options from the customer. So immediately you can see which we've got a problem here, because actually we might send marketing communication to this record via mobile SMS, but actually the customer's opted out for the same mobile number against 2 different records and another two records. So which one takes precedence? We need to make sure that we have a robust mechanism to ensure that we only use the consent record that is the most recent. I haven't seen enough evidence yet that every data provider is actually, or data processor is recording this in the right way, and making it so that if you access this middle record, you actually are able to cross-reference that against the other records. So that's something we've done in iConsent, and I'm going to walk through how that works in a minute. So this is just an example of a typical dealer where you've got 3 records, and they're all the same customer, but they're all different. So the way iConsent works is we've got 3 records, and what we want to create is a whitelist. So by that I mean, anytime a customer says yes to consent through a particular method of communication, we would add that record and that type of communication to the whitelist. So for this particular customer, what we've said is the most recent consent, and this is a new record at the bottom, this is our consent record. The mail has been agreed to yes, the email yes, the telephone yes, and the mobile is no. Now, what that does is it sits over top of these other 3 records so that we only use the bottom one for our marketing. And that way we're absolutely sure that whenever we go to do marketing, we're always going to be using the most up-to-date consent, and we don't need to rely on what's been put against each of these duplicate records. So that's where customers agreed. But what if a customer has actually said, I don't want anything from you at all? Well, in the same scenario, you may have a customer with 3 records, but when you've asked them for consent, they've actually opted out to everything. They don't want any marketing from you whatsoever. What you have to be sure of is that you're not going to process their information at all for any reason, even though you've got yeses against some of the records, as you can see here. So in this case, you need a blacklist. And again, this is not something I've seen from a number of data processors that this has been managed in the right way. Because the last thing you want is to send an email to a customer who's actually opted out of all communication, and it's because you had duplicate records. So when I do the live demonstration next, I'm going to show you how we've actually built that into iConsent and how it will overcome having numerous records across multiple databases. It doesn't just have to be in the one database. So what we'll do is we'll switch to our live demonstration. And I will show you how that is going to work. So here we have my iPad screen. So this is completely live. You can see our current suite of apps across the top. So we have our Connect management reporting app, a video first app, which is for interacting with customers via video. Automate, which is our new customer app that's coming very, very soon. IVHC, which is our vehicle health check app, and I'll talk you through how that works in a minute when I come to the active digital reception. And then iConsent, which is our latest app, which you won't find in the App Store just yet. It's just in the final phase of testing, but it is going to be available on Android and iOS, so it can work on either type of tablet. iConsent will also work in a browser on a desktop device as well. So let's open up iConsent. Now, the way this is laid out is it's designed to open up into the consent capture. I've already pre-filled some information, so I'm going to search for the surname Jones and the postcode we see here. So I'm going to click on search. Now, what it's done, as you can see on the left, I've got the DMS records, so it's reading DMS data, and that can be set up a number of ways with any DMS that's in existence. I've done a search, and straight away we can see that I've come back with the surname Jones and the postcode that we entered. We did originally try to narrow the search down by looking for house names and house numbers and Mr. and salutations and things like that. The problem is it can miss records doing it that way. So you need to start quite wide with just a surname and a postcode. The reason for that you'll see now. So when we go into there, so we just ask, can iConsent read Pinewood? Yes, it can. We connect to Pinewood via a service called Vital. It doesn't have to be that service. We can do a manual file extract, but yes, pretty much any DMS we can. There's multiple ways we can interact from, like I said, a nightly file extract all the way up to a full API integration. But it does depend on the DMS. So hopefully that answers that question straight away. So what the search has brought back here is 6 records from various locations. You can see on the right, we've got 3 from a DMS and 3 from other locations as well. And then look, breaking it down further, you can see we have 3 different customers all living at the same address. So you've got Miss Alice Jones on there twice. You've got Mrs. Christine Jones on there 3 times. And you've got Miss Laura Jones on there once. So what we're actually dealing with here is, on the face of it, the mother and 2 daughters. That would be my guess. But the point is that what we're trying to do is identify the individual. Paul, sorry, you just missed the answer I gave. So the DMS answer I gave just then was that yes, we can interact with Pinewood. We do it via a service called Vital. They provide us a feed directly from the Pinewood software. Hopefully that answers the question for you. Okay, so I know there's a question in the chat, but I'm just going to go a little bit further and then I'll come back to that. So when we are looking at this record here now, we want to work with the customer that we're actually, is stood in front of us, or is on the phone, or however we're capturing this data. So the really important part about GDPR is that we need to identify the individual. We can't just you can't put 3 people that live in the same address into one record. You have to have them separated out because they have to be managed completely separate from each other. Paul has just asked about CDK Drive. Yes, Paul, CDK Drive at the moment is ODBC. We are looking for API integration as well, but again, you can do the one-off nightly download. Could be done a number of ways. So pretty much any DMS. We already integrate with many DMS already for our other software. So this is no different. Right, so going back to the functionality. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to work with, it's actually Miss Alice Jones that I've got with me. So I'm going to work with that particular record. Now, it's intelligent enough to know that they are similar records. So we only need to click on one, it will highlight both of them. And I'm going to click on next, and that's going to take me to a screen where it allows me to verify the data we're looking at is the right data for the customer. So if we were to have multiple numbers, then it's going to allow me, or if the number's not correct, we can actually delete that. I'm just going to copy it just so I can show you something else in a moment. But we could actually get rid of the mobile if the customer doesn't want to disclose it. I'm going to put it back in just for now. Or it will give us multiple choice as well. Now, something else that's going to do when I click next, it's actually going to make sure that the email address is valid. Now, I know this is not a valid email, so when I click next, what should happen? It's going to check the email and it's going to alert me to the fact that that's actually not a real email address. So it could be that it's been typed in correctly. And what you can see here is actually Louise in the middle has been spelt incorrectly. So it's going to alert the user straight away that this is not a real email address. And what I'm going to do for the purpose of this exercise is just to take the email address out completely. And I'm going to click next because this is all fictitious information, so I don't want to trip up the process. Now, this has actually remembered a previous consent that we've gone through with this customer. So as you can see, all the boxes are actually already in grey. Now, I realise that under the GDPR, you're not allowed pre-filled tick boxes, but actually what we're doing here is we've already been through this process once before, and it's highlighting what was previously consented to. So the email is grayed out because the customer didn't provide an email address. So that's not allowing us to record any consent for that as well. But we can then choose from yes or no, and we agree with the customer exactly what we want to do. You can see at the top, there's actually a customer contact promise. So what we have to do is record what we're saying to the customer every single time we take consent. Now, that's really important because if you ever need to refer back to it, if you do have some kind of investigation, then you need to be able to prove what was said to the customer at the time. On the left, you'll also see the information that we've agreed to apply consent to. So for this customer, let's say, for example, they're fine to have marketing by mail and phone. They didn't provide an email address, but they don't want us to send any SMS marketing. So these options are just for marketing. They're not for what we talked about before with legitimate interest. That can still be applied. The customer can read the privacy policy. Now, we've spent a lot of time working with our legal team to build a privacy policy that is a really good template. It's something we will supply as part of iConsent, not to be carbon copied, but to be used as a good template to start with. And we'd always encourage you to run by your own legal professionals that you use to ensure that it does fit your own business. But that is part of iConsent that we will log every time the customer supplies consent, which version of the privacy policy they agreed to. That's another really important part of capturing consent. Because it's fully auditable. Should you ever need to refer back to it, we can actually provide you with exactly the version of consent. And I'll show you how that works in a minute. We can capture consent face-to-face and provide a signature. We can also do it remotely, so by any of these options. What's really important if you take consent via telephone, again, is that you don't have to record the conversation, but you must log what was said to the customer. And that's where the customer contact promise comes into play. So you must have some kind of mechanism where you can say, this is what we said to the customer at the time, we captured it over the telephone, this is the version of the privacy policy. So all of these things must be logged, and they must be logged in an auditable fashion that you can easily refer back to. I'm going to change it back to a signature just to show you how that works. And I'm going to save this consent. Now, what you can then do is we can open the consent in a PDF on this device. So I'll just load that up now. And what this is going to allow us to do is view the consent, which, as you can see it there, and we could then print it to an air printer if we wish. Just cancel that off. We could also email it to the customer had they provided us with an email address. Or if you don't have a network printer or an air printer and the customer doesn't have an email address, you could even email it to the user that's logged in on the device, and then that will allow them to print it off from a regular PC. So, you know, there's multiple ways to provide a copy of the consent to the customer. Now, so what we've done at this stage is we've captured the consent, and that then is stored on our servers centrally. And it's what we do is we create whitelists for every single yes that the customer provided us. That's going to allow us to then review the consent and use it further down the line. So we'll do there's two ways you can do this. We can review consent by clicking into the app, and we can search for just one particular method of. So I'm just going to go back and review that. Perfect. I know what I did. I said no to marketing for that, so I'm just going to change that to a yes. Put a yes for that. We'll sign it and we'll save the consent. Perfect. Okay, so when, let's say further down the line, we want to review the consent, we can put the mobile number in, and what you can see has come back is we actually have a yes for consent down the bottom here. What you can also see is that the consent, the date that the consent was agreed to, the fact that we are allowed to contact the customer via SMS, the version of the privacy policy that was agreed to, and we can view that if we wish by clicking the view button. And then what we can also do is view the consent itself. What it will do is it will pull all of the consent that was agreed to into one form, one file. And we can see now that we can actually contact this customer via SMS, via mail, and via phone. And this is the information that the customer agreed to at that moment in time. And we also have a copy of the signature that we took from the customer as well. So this then gives you a robust ad hoc mechanism to actually know that you can contact a customer for marketing on a case-by-case basis. So when I click close, what that's going to do is actually destroy that record, because we keep the consent separate to the customer record. That's part of our ISO accreditation that you must do that. So when I've clicked close, that's actually now been separated and destroyed. So far, this is how we've captured consent and reviewed it in the app on a one-on-one basis. What I also want to show you is how else we can capture consent, because that's just a standalone product. We also have the ability to capture consent through our other products as well, because what we want to be able to do is have the opportunity to capture as much consent as possible in all of our different processes. So another process that we find is very, very useful is actually through our service advisor module, and this is part of our vehicle health check application. I'm going to show you how this works. Is that the service advisor would use this on a tablet to check a customer in. They can go through the simple questions of making sure they have a service book, checking over any basic checks with the customer as they wish. Record damage, so any scratches or corrosion on the vehicle. Click next on that as well. Do want to take a photo, double check the customer information with the customer, and then, as you saw before, we have the consent options as well. So that's another opportunity to capture consent through another process in the business. We have also then, if I change back to the presentation, I'll show you how it works in the desktop as well. So what we also have is our regular portal, and you can see down the left-hand side we have all of the regular applications that existing customers will know already, and the services that we provide. Across the top, though, we're adding a option called iConsent for desktop, and I'm not going to take you through how this works because it's exactly the same functionality that you've just seen on the tablet. But this is another way that you can capture consent on an ad hoc basis. You can also review consent in the same way on a case-by-case basis as well. Beyond that, you'll actually be able to review consent in a so you'll be able to capture consent in our CRM system. So here you can see our follow-up module, which allows us to call customers for service and MOT reminders, following up with that red and amber work. We're actually adding exactly the same functionality, capturing consent in the bottom there. The other elements that we're doing is we're adding the ability to, if you're doing a service plan quote through our service plan system, you'll be able to capture consent there as well. You don't actually need to capture consent for a service plan quote because it's transactional, and you don't need consent for that. But we feel that if you're capturing customer details, why not ask for the consent for marketing at that same time? You don't have to have that switched on, but it's just we feel that we should try and provide as much opportunity to capture consent as possible. So what we then have is a GDPR daily cleanse. Now, every time we capture consent, let's say, for example, in the example we saw before, we have duplicate records in the DMS. We create a master consent record, and that's not a new customer record. It's just we're capturing the consent separately against the mobile, email, telephone, and address, and we put that back together whenever it's requested. But what this does is actually shows you where you've got consent created and you've got duplicate records in the DMS. It will also show you where the customer has actually signed up for the TPS, so that's the telephone preference service, and the mail preference service. It will show you where that exists, and you can reflect those options wherever you need to. One thing to point out, though, is if the customer has given you consent for marketing, and they've actually also subscribed to the TPS and MPS, the consent will override those two because they've given you specific consent to send marketing via those channels. So we will show you in this particular part of the module or how all of those options are brought together, and you will have a master record for actually viewing all of the marketing options for a customer through all these different channels. So that's the daily cleanse. The other element we're going to build is the bulk cleanse. So the way this works is, for example, you want to do a large marketing campaign for sales. So maybe there's 1,000 customers, you've got an event coming up and you want to send out an email shot. So what you'll be able to do is take the information from any of your systems, not just the DMS, it can be the showroom system, CRM, whatever it is. You'll be able to download our templates, download the data from all the different systems, populate them into our template, and then upload them into the GDPR cleanse. That will then go away and compare it to the mail preference service, telephone preference service, email validity, and also the master consent database. And you will then be sent via email the record with all of the cleansed file on. And let's say you put 1,000 customers in, you might only get back 700 email addresses, 600 mobiles for SMS purposes, and so on and so on. But you will be absolutely guaranteed that the records you're then using are right for marketing. Something else to point out while we're talking about email campaigns is I very recently learned that MailChimp have a little bit of an issue in that their servers are currently in America. I do believe they're trying to set up a European server, but I don't know if that's going to be in place by the 25th of May. The problem with American servers after GDPR takes place is that you need permission to use a customer that's in the European Union. You need permission to use their data on servers outside the European Union. So MailChimp is going to be an issue for that. So I'd encourage you to go away and have a look at how you're affected if you currently use MailChimp or any other mail services that have their servers outside of the EU. There's something to be aware of on that. Okay, so we're going into management information now. So what we have is, because we're collecting all this data on consent capture, what we want to be able to do is keep a check on how much consent we're capturing on a daily basis, and weekly and monthly, and in total as well. So some of you may already use our Connect app, those of you that are existing customers. And what the Connect app does is it gives you management information on all our systems like VHC, service plan, and so on. What we're actually building in as well is this data on consent capture. So there's various levels. You can see here we've got consent that's been captured on today, 28 days, how many people have been asked versus how many have consented. If you have a group, you can compare the group in a leaderboard league style. How many people have been asked, how many have consented, and the percentage. And then you've got a breakdown actually. So of all the people that have been asked, how many email addresses were captured, how many consented, and the same for the other three types of consent as well. Okay, so I'm getting a couple more questions coming through about Vital and Pinewood. So from Paul, he's asking, will Vital still be able to see Pinewood after the recent update? That's a very good question that I can't answer right now, but I will look into it and get back to everyone. And my understanding is that the answer is yes, because the manufacturers use Vital to pull data from various suppliers actually, and Pinewood being one of them. So I can't see that not being the case, but we'll get a definitive answer on that and come back to you specifically. Francis is asked, will it integrate with CDK, Rev8 and Reef? We are currently talking, well, CDK Rev8 for sure. We do that usually via ODBC, but there are alternative ways of doing it as well. Reef, potentially. We are starting to talk to other suppliers as well as to how we may interact. Certainly you'll be able to take an extract from Reef and upload it to the GDPR cleanse. That's for sure you'll be able to do that because we'll give you the templates for that. In terms of how deep we go into integration is going to be a case of seeing how that works over time. Someone else asked, do you already connect with the DMS ICAR used on the PSA franchise dealers? That I'm not entirely sure of. I don't know the full list of DMS providers, but again, we'll take that away and we'll come back to you. We can connect to any DMS at various levels, as I've already said. So even if it's only a nightly extract via a simple file extract and upload, we can do it at that level if we can't do it anymore. But like I say, we can interact with any DMS database. It just depends on the process of how that works. So I hope that answers those questions, guys. I will hang around in the chat afterwards as well to talk about any more things like this. Someone else has asked, any plans to allow customers to access the app via portal so they can amend their own details? So we are building our own app for customers that dealers can use. We do intend to build in consent options into that, so that the idea is that customers can manage their own data or their own account, if you like, within the app. How that integrates with other systems, it will be, we'll have to look at on a case-by-case basis. But yes, our ultimate goal is to give the customer the ability to manage their own preferences within the Automate app. Will it integrate with Reynolds and Reynolds Power? So I think I'm getting questions on lots of different DMS providers. The answer is still going to be yes, we can integrate with them. It just depends on the level. I think what we'll do is we'll send out to everyone who's on the webinar how we integrate currently with each of the DMS providers, so you can get an understanding, and we'll actually we'll communicate directly with you, if that's okay. Because otherwise we might just be talking about every DMS, and there are many actually. So going back to the management information, so we've got the app that you'll be able to manage the data gathering. the consent gathering. We'll also have push reporting via email and also reporting suite. So this is an example of a week-by-week breakdown of different sites for different types. Some interesting stats that we've actually had. So far through this particular group, we've actually been using iConsent for a number of months now. We've had 16,000 jobs through that we've tried to gain consent for. We've only had 795 people opt out of marketing consent, which is quite reassuring because that equates to 10%. Now, that leaves 90% customers that will still opt in for marketing through one or more of the following channels. So you can see here the breakdown. And then you can analyze that by dealer, by contact method, and also on a week by week to see a trend. These are the overall stats though, and what we were quite surprised with was already that 48% of people still want contact by mail. Not unsurprising, the biggest is still email. But only 68%. So actually, only 2/3 of the 90% actually want contact by email. So we need to still rely on all four methods of communication. We can't just rely on one or the other. And quite clearly, half of people still want mail, postal marketing. So that was quite interesting. And at the bottom, you've got 10% no future contact down there as well. Moving on to the other thing I mentioned at the beginning was our compliance manager, and this is something we thought we would include. Just it's nothing to do with content capture or any of that. This is essentially to help you focus on what needs to be done to get your business compliant for GDPR. So what we have here is various categories of compliance. With various action points that can be, we're going to have some standardized ones that apply to everyone. We're also going to give you the ability to add your own that are specific to your business. We're going to include any useful information that's relevant for that particular part of legislation. And then on the right-hand side, you'll be able to manage how compliant you are against all of these. We'll be including some useful documentation that we've come across that we feel will guide you in each of these areas. And then finally, you'll be able to, and this is the most important part, you'll be able to upload your evidence. And that's really crucial because if at any point in the future you do suffer an investigation for whatever reason, you will very quickly and easily be able to download your evidence that you need for that investigation. So that's really important. I'm going to come on to pricing in just one moment. There's two more areas that came up on the last webinar that we did. They relate to subject access requests and also the right to be forgotten. So these are actually, well, subject access requests are something that people have the right to have now, but it's going to become more publicized when GDPR comes into play. And that is essentially where a customer can request that you provide them everything you hold on them. So what we're going to actually build is a console where all you need to do is put the customer's details in. We'll cross-reference it against every record that we have and that is stored. And you'll be able to download in one file everything that we can find in our databases on that particular customer. That's going to make your life a lot easier in terms of serving a subject access request. In a similar way, when it comes to right to be forgotten, so a customer could potentially walk into your business and say, I want you to delete everything you have on me. That's not an absolute because there may be existing contracts such as finance or service plan that you wouldn't delete their information against those because there's a reason to keep that until that contract is finished. But what we will do, it will have a functionality where you can simply submit the customer's details and our servers will delete everything that's appropriate and also flag anything that needs to be deleted at the end of a contract. So those are another two modules that will be built into the platform. Again, it just makes being compliant a lot more easy to fulfill. So before we get to the Q&A, I just want to talk through the pricing. So the pricing that iConsent costs for everything you've seen, and you can see it listed here, it's £99 per month per rooftop. So we did it, so if you have multi-brand under one rooftop, then that's still £99 a month. But each individual site is a separate charge. But for that, you get the desktop and the tablet modules that I've showed you through. You also get iConsent integration with all of these other modules here. You get the GDPR cleanse, both the daily and the bulk. The mail preference service and telephone preference service, that's all included. Those services are, as are the email validation service. We will host a privacy policy for you and we'll manage that for you ongoing. The Connect app reporting, the compliance manager, and the other items I just mentioned at the end. DMS integration, it varies in cost from anything from free all the way up to the cost of a one-off cost of a ODBC license or something like that. Like I say, it does depend on a case-by-case basis, depending on the DMS and which version of their particular software you're actually using as well. There's some older versions of CDK Autoline that actually need a fairly hefty upgrade to actually have any kind of integration. So it does depend on what you're using. Okay, so I'll put our contact details on there and then we'll just move into the Q&A. So I've answered the question from Natalie. So Stuart's asked, will this integrate with Reynolds and Reynolds Power? I did that one before actually, so I'll just mark that as done for now. Danny's asked, is the presentation available after this session? We feel that you need this to present to our other managers. I've not been asked that one yet, but yes, we can absolutely do that. Now, what we can also offer is we'll come to you and do a demonstration live in your business. We have several business development managers that are regionalised around the country that can happily come out to you and do that if you want to have a one-on-one interaction. We can look at making this available. I can also, if you want to do a conference call, I'm happy to do that as well. There's multiple ways we can help you present this to your internal teams. So Danny, I'll contact you directly after this, and we'll talk about how you want to go about doing that. So hopefully that answers that particular question. Craig has asked, does this affect our right to contact through legitimate interest? Or how does this affect our right to contact through legitimate interest? So just to answer that question, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip back into the app because it's probably easier if I show you very quickly just how that would work. So I'm going to go back into iConsent, and something I probably didn't talk about in enough detail was that very question. So let me just walk you through. So we'll go through to those again. Take out the email. Perfect. Okay, so if you imagine we've got, set these all to yes. So if we have yeses, then those are yeses to marketing. So that means that sales can send marketing out, after sales can send things like summer checks, winter checks, things like that. So things that you wouldn't really have a legitimate interest for, and you do really need marketing consent for. So if a customer says, no, I don't want any marketing from you, that doesn't necessarily mean they don't want service and MOT reminders or recall campaign reminders, things like that. That just means they don't want marketing. So if you imagine there's 3 tiers with marketing at the top, you've got legitimate interest in the middle, where a customer hasn't said, I don't want anything from you, I just don't want marketing. So that's where you would still have, even though you've got 4 no's, or 3 no's in this case, because you haven't got an email address, you could still actually send a service and MOT reminder, even because of that. It could be the case, though, that a customer says, look, I don't want marketing, and I don't even want any kind of reminders or anything like that. So you can, when you'll notice when if I have at least 1 yes, I don't get the box in the bottom corner. However, if I press no, and so I've now got 4 no's to marketing, what we get is an additional box that says, I want to opt out of all communications. So at the moment, the customer's just not on the whitelist for any of these communications. If the customer opts out of all communications, what we get is a warning when we tick that box, and you get a pop-up to say, look, we're not going to send you any marketing, and we're not going to send you any reminders. However, the one thing the customer really can't override is if there's some kind of emergency, and that would be, for example, a safety recall. It may even be if a customer was in yesterday and their brakes are dangerous, let's say they're worn out completely, and the customer took the car away, you may have asked them to sign a disclaimer, but you then also may want to call them the next day just out of a duty of care to say, look, I'm really concerned that you didn't have these brakes replaced. We'd like to at least give you the opportunity to, try and book it back in, or whatever you want to say in your script. I believe your legitimate the legitimate interest of making that call would override even the customer opting out of all communication, because that is there's a severe risk of to the customer there. So there's instances where the customer can't opt out, and even if there's a contract in place, let's say it's a financial contract, you would still have a legitimate interest, even if the customer's opt out to double communications, to communicate with that customer regarding, providing you have a justified reason to do it. So what we're trying to do there is we're trying to give you 3 tiers of marketing reminders in the middle, if you like, and then absolutely nothing apart from the what is totally and utterly required, such as recalls and contractual obligations. So I hope that answers your question on legitimate interest there. Okay, so we've got another question coming in saying, are we correct in thinking the checkboxes in the DMS won't be good enough? That's a very good question. So this all comes down to what is being recorded in the DMS. It's not good enough, like I said early on, to just have, yes, you can contact the mobile, if it's not recording the version of the privacy policy and it's not recording the statement that was used, and if it's actually not cross-referencing against duplicate records. So something I'm quite nervous about, and I certainly haven't seen enough evidence that all of the DMS providers are providing a robust mechanism to overcome these issues. This is why we built iConsent. iConsent is designed to sit over top of all of your systems and be able to be a single master consent database that you can then cross-reference all of your systems against, and you will always be guaranteed to have the right level of consent in place. So Sean, I hope that answers your question. I haven't seen all the DMS providers' solutions, but I just, like I say, I'm not confident enough to say that everyone has got it to the level of detail that we've put in place. So Paul, yes, I'll give you a call, not a problem at all. Claire, can you just make a note I need to call Paul Shearsmith? And I'll absolutely do that. So Richard is asking, on the customer contact promise, can this be edited? So yes, absolutely. Very good question, Richard. What we're going to do is, when on the setup forms for iConsent, you'll have 2 boxes, in fact 3 boxes to fill in. One is the customer contact promise, which we'll give you ours, but you can edit that as you wish. We're going to give you an option to have a script in our CRM system, so that when your telephone operators are on the phone to a customer, it'll be a modified version of the customer contact promise, that it'll be more of a script format that they can follow. And again, that will be recorded every time we capture consent, so you can refer back to it. And then we'll also suggest our privacy policy that you can then go away, and you then need to provide us with your own privacy policy, and we will store that for you. And like I say, every time it gets updated, we'll then also provide you with the ability to update consent with customers against the new privacy policy. So I've answered that one. Dawn, for legitimate interest, I know we can't advertise any offer prices, as this can be classed as marketing, but can we advertise normal retail price? So this will, whenever it comes down to price, technically that's still making an offer, which, the advice I watched on a webinar recently that was actually provided by the DMA was, they said, even if you don't have consent, if you're just using legitimate interest, so let's say it's a service and MOT reminder, they say you can have you can apply a rule of 75% reminder, 25% marketing. Now, this isn't set in stone. There's no legislation that suggests this, but what they're saying is that, providing your messages predominantly reminder, and you're not trying to sell them everything. So let's say it's not a page full of offers with only one line saying your service is due, then as long as it's the other way around, then that should be okay. I say should because I'm not a lawyer and I can't actually say that for certain, but this was guidance provided by the DMA not so long ago, that you should still be able to have, let's say, for example, your MOT is due, various other things on there. You could potentially put that our MOTs are £40, yes. That is the guidance that's been given by the DMA. But like I say, I can't say that as an absolute. Paul's asked for a copy of the presentation. Okay, no problem at all. What I might do is tidy it up so it's in a format that you guys can then present to your own teams, because I realize a lot of it was live demonstration, which is not going to make sense on a presentation. So I'll do that. And then final question I've got is, does this allow for a shared privacy policy? Yes, it absolutely does. So, you know, with us hosting the privacy policy, it's going to allow for that to be available in all of the different areas. We will host it so it can be available on linked to on your website and various other places. Essentially what it means is that you've got, again, like with the consent, you've got your privacy policy in one place, and that will mean that you can always refer back to having that singular version of privacy policy. You haven't got multiple versions in different places, because that also is quite dangerous thing to have. Okay, guys, hopefully I've answered all the questions. There's no more coming through. I will now hang around for a few more minutes in the chat, probably another 5 minutes. You know, by all means, you can email us. If you can give us a call. The people that have asked for contact, I will make contact shortly afterwards, and we'll do that. Perfect, no problem at all. Danny, your burning question, is that for the call or is that for now? Cool, no problem at all. And Stuart, so lots of requests for the presentation. Not a problem, I'll make sure that happens. What we'll also do is we'll send you the marketing guide that I mentioned earlier on. We have a brochure for iConsent, which I'll send you as well. And like I say, if you want live demonstrations, we'll happily facilitate that as well. Well, thank you very much. That concludes the webinar, and you know, please get in direct contact. I will make contact with the people that have requested it as well, and hopefully speak soon.